Hey everybody, what's up? In today's video, I've got two matches against Agreus. This guy runs at 7% with an average buy-in of $153. So he's a sort of higher mid-stakes regular on Full Tilt Poker. The first hand here, I limp and he raises me to 80. And never played this guy before, not sure what's going on, so 5-7, pretty easy to fold that. And the next hand, min raises, which of course I'm going to call because I've got a pretty deep implied odds at the moment. And he makes a pretty standard C bet once I check. So two hands, not much going on. He's looking a little aggressive, but no need for me to do anything silly at this stage. 10-6, I limp, and he lets me limp, so he's not going to attack on my limps, which is good. And I take a stab here, and he check raises me. So he's been pretty aggressive so far in this match, and doesn't really matter what he's trying to represent here because I'm out of there. Alright, Ace Jack, our first decent hand. Him in raises. I could 3-bet, but I don't like to 3-bet hands like Ace Jack. I think if the ace hits, I'm not going to get that much action a lot of the time, and if it doesn't hit, if it's a low card flop, it's going to be pretty easy for him to put me on high cards and get aggressive. So I flat. Pretty horrible flop, king 3-4 with two hearts. Makes his standard 60C bet, and I'm out of there. So 4 hands down, nothing much happening, and we just need to be patient. Alright, I try a raise on my junk, and I just want to know what he's going to do. That's really why I'm making this raise. I need to know if he's going to fold to my raises, or if he's going to call and then fold. So I make this raise and get called. King 10-3, that's 2 cards I can represent the king and the 10, and when he checks to me I fire out a 60 bet and get the fold. Alright, min raises and I call on queen 8. Once again a pretty horrible flop. Once again he c-bets and I give it up. So I've made a pretty quiet start here, being tight, and that's fine. I limp and he 4x's me again, and this is the second time in 6 or 7 hands. So I'm calling this, and a king 8 flop, pretty dry. I was thinking about actually betting, but if he had a bet, I might have raised him, is what I'm trying to say. But now he checks, I think I'll just check it, and the jack on the turn looks good. 60 into 160 pot. He could be slow playing a monster here. I can't get too excited, so I'm going to flat call and then check behind. I can't imagine him calling with much worse on the river, though it's possible. And he's got a6, so yeah, his 4x there was a little bit little light in my opinion, just trying to punish my limp. That's fine. Alright, king jack, min raise, flat call, beautiful flop for me, and he c-bet nearly every time in position, and this time he doesn't, so that really isn't very good for me. I finally hit a monster and he checks. On the turn I'm going to donk out for 40, try and get some value, and he folds. So nice timing from him there. Alright, limp my 7-8, and I think stab here, get the fold, so he's tightening up a little bit there, and more of his min raising. Of course I'm going to compete with king 6, and then I'm going to give up. So it's amazing timing. He's had the one flop I've hit, he's been air, he's been out of there, and every time that I miss he's stabbing, so good timing from him, but that happens. Alright, try my raise here, get 3-bet and fold, so that didn't work out too well, and he folds the next one. Alright, queen 6 at the moment. I know he's aggressive but not overly aggressive, and I haven't had much that I can work with. The only time I've really hit a decent hand, he's folded. So patience, I'm still in the match. I've got my starting stack pretty much. No need to do anything silly. Alright, raise the queen 6, and now I can represent the ace, which I do, and he raises me, and he is pretty aggressive, and I'll just give that up and wait. Hopefully I'm going to hit something in the right spot, but this doesn't look like that spot. And I keep on calling and then folding post flop like a tight knit. But that's, I'm waiting for my spot and hoping to get paid off. Alright, min raise, calls, or I call at least, and he C bets, and I'm going to fold. I'm feeling like I should be making a move soon, but I don't want to sort of get out of line either. Alright, so I've raised here. Not the best flop to C bet, but I'll give it a go anyway. I can represent the king or queen, and he flats me, and I could fire another barrel here, trying to suggest that I have the ace or king, but if I do that, I won't be getting folds if he's got anything like queen 10, queen jack, king 10 or king jack or anything like that, or two diamonds. So I think it's hard to fold him out on this board because it's so wet, and I'm just going to give up. And he had queen 9, probably one of the few hands I might have got a fold from, but never mind. It's better safe than sorry sometimes. Alright, min raise, call. He makes his C bet, and I think I'm going to make a move here. And I raise into 180, and he folds. So that helps. Limp my king queen, ready for him to raise me, and not ready for this horrible flop. And queen on the turn, that's a lovely card. Betting for value, get called, and I think that 4 surely couldn't have hurt him. I can't have helped him. I can't imagine he's raised on something like, like 7-5 or something like that. So I think I'll bet again here, hope to get called by, maybe ace X, and he folds. Alright, king jack. Calling his min raise, missing, and it feels like every time I've got a king, the flop comes down with an ace these days. Sometimes you just feel that way. Alright, he min raises, and I'm going to give up my 10-4. Alright, 6-10, I raise, he calls. What an awful flop. And I just think I'm going to take my bat and ball and go home. This is horrible. And he had queen 2, so he's calling my raise pretty wide, obviously. And if I had a C-bet, I would have taken that one down. So at the moment, I'm kind of zigging when I should zag, and I'm zagging when I should zig, meaning that everything I do seems to be pretty much wrong. But never mind. Alright, he min raises, and I'm going to fold my 10-3 and my 8-2. And sometimes when things aren't quite going right, you've just got to slow down. Here, I 3-bet him pre-flop. That's my first 3-bet in the entire match. And he's been raising, probably, 80 or 90% of his hands pre-flop, so he was due. Alright, fold my 5-2, and obviously I'm going to call here, and he bets 90, which is pretty standard. Not going to raise here, I don't want to get all my chips in case he actually has a hand. I'm going to flat, and on the turn, he checks, so therefore on the river I need to bet to make him fold a possible 10 and any other hand that he might have. He might have pocket 6s or 7s or 8s or something. I can fold that out as well. So 240, a good size bet here, and he folds. Right, limping, and he 4x's. Looks like a spite raise, but never mind. And call here and hit. And ace is obviously not a good card. And I'm going to check it down, and he actually had 8-9, so he hit top pair, fairly conservative, not to bet again on the turn. If he had a bet, I was going to fold on the turn, so no loss of chips for him as it turns out. Alright, ace 3, I limp, and here he fires full pot, and I decide to call just because I don't like it, hit my ace on the turn, and 240 on the turn. This really looks like a 2-pair sort of hand, and I made this call and then thought, oh god, he's got 2-pair, the way he's bet pot, which people often do, and now the 4 on the river, and he checks, and I actually thought to myself, well, he's probably got 10-5, and I know that sounds like hindsight because I'm making the video after the match, but that's why I bet for value here, because I figured that he probably had 10-5 and the 4 had counterfeited his hand, and that was actually the case. So yeah, I mean, I kind of worked out what he had on the turn after I'd called and thought, oh, poo, I've just made a big error. And then when the four came, I thought, oh, I think I've counterfeited him, and therefore I bet on the river there for value. It's a pretty thin value bet, but it worked. All right, so he's min raising. We're missing again, and he's c betting again. Good timing, and we're just being a little quiet here, just waiting. Not getting very good hands, so I'm going to fold a little bit. Just waiting for my spot. And he checks, so of course I actually should have stabbed and would have normally stabbed. And now I make 80 on the turn. Not sure why I didn't stab there. I remembered myself stabbing on the flop, so a bit weird not to stab, but sometimes we do these odd things. Alright, min raise from him, and I'm folding, getting pretty tight now, waiting, and this is a good spot. And he bets, and I often like to shove in this sort of spot because my top pair with the second top kicker is probably good, but there's a lot of cards I do not want to see, like a jack or a queen or an ace or obviously a 9 or even something like an 8 or sort of 7 can complete straights and all sorts of hands that he might have. So I'm really sort of want to get the chips in now, and I don't really want to see a sort of turn card and have him make a big bet. And that gets a fold, so I'm happy with that. We've got him at 2-1, and every time he loses a pot, he seems to make that spite raise. I wish I could catch a hand, take advantage of it, but we can't. And folding, limping, hitting, but it's a bit of a wet board, so I bet and get called. I'm going to bet again because I think he's more likely to be on a club draw than a queen, and get called, and then that's just a horrible, horrible river. And he actually had the ace, which was a complete surprise to me, and no way I thought he actually had an ace in this spot. So bizarre. I completely misread that. Alright, min raising, and I think I'm going to ship it. Hope that he might make a bad call on something like, ace 6 or something, and he folds. I was trying to make that look a little bit like a spite shove as well. Alright, ace jack, limp, and if he had a raise, I would have shipped. And don't like this low flop because he hasn't raised pre-flop, and this is a sort of flop that's going to hit his non-raising range, if that makes sense. Betting on the turn aggressively because it's a very wet board, and picking up the pot. Alright, king 9, he min raises, and I think probably some people would even consider shipping this. I just flatted, and obviously I'm going to flat here, and that's a pretty nice turn, and that's a pretty horrible river. So that's one of the worst rivers I can imagine. I'm going to bet really as a blocking / value bet. If he shoves, I'm going to have to fold, and he folds, thank goodness. Alright, folding my 10-5 and calling this, hitting a good piece of the flop. And that 6 is not a very nice card, completing the flush and putting a possible full house out there. And his jack was good, so he bets his top pair once and doesn't bet it again once he gets called. That's worth noting. Alright, min raise myself and pick up a pot. Fold my jack 4. And pocket 8s. Shoving it because I'm hoping he's going to call me on something like ace x, just like I did with my pocket 9s. And he does call me on ace 8, so that's a pretty good hand for him to have. Only one overcard. And now I have to dodge the 10 and ace on the river, which I do. So that's the first match, and he seems to be an aggressive player. I offered him a rematch, which he accepted, which kind of surprised me. I thought that, I didn't think that I was showing sort of huge leaks and he'd want to play me again, but he chose to do so. So this is the first hand of the second match. 3-5 offsuit, which I'm going to fold pre-flop. And now he min raises to my ace 8. Going to flat call this, don't want to 3-bet him. and a pretty dry flop. He bets, and I'm going to check raise him here, try and raise him on this dry flop and see if we can get a fold out of him. And that doesn't work. He calls it. I should fire a barrel on this jack, trying to represent the jack, and I didn't. And I think if I had fired again on the jack, there's at least a decent chance I might have taken down the pot right there and got myself an extra 160 chips instead of splitting it. So, I guess if I'm going to raise on the flop, I should fire it up with a bet on the turn. That's probably the moral of that story. Alright, next hand, limping my 9-8. He checks, and I'm going to bet and take down the pot, of course. And more min raising, which I'm calling deep. Hit middle pair, and I'm going to check this. And he checks. Now the board's got a lot more drawy, a lot wetter, with a straight and flush draw there. So I'm going to bet here, make him pay in case he's got a 10 or an ace. And he folds. He does a pretty good job of avoiding when I hit and see betting. When I miss, that's what it feels like. Limping my jack 4, and he 3x's me, so we'll let him have that, no problem. 10-4, which I call, and we hit middle pair. And I raise this straight away simply because I want to kind of find out where I'm at. If he makes a big re-raise, I can easily fold, and I don't want to give him too cheap a sort of turn card in case he's got any sort of draw. And he folds, so that works pretty well. I'm happy with the way that play worked. 10-4 again. And when he hasn't raised pre-flop, I think he hasn't hit this sort of board, high cards, but he check raises me, so I'm going to have to give that up. Not sure what he's got here, but I'm not calling on my gut shot, so we'll let that go. Alright, min raising, hit middle pair. He fires 60, which I'm going to flat call, and on the turn he bets 120, and I think I'm going to fold now. He could have the ace, could have a 9, not really sure sort of where I'm at, and 120 to the 200 pot, I'll just let it go, I think, and wait. There'll be spots coming, I'm sure. Right, 8-3, I'm going to fold that so I'm not playing absolute trash like sometimes I do. And here I try min raising myself, see what he does, and he 3-bets me to 140, so a6 is not a very good hand in this spot. I'm going to let it go. And nothing much is happening here, not hitting much, not getting great hands, and every time I miss the flop he seems to see bet, as I was saying before. This time I got ace 10, I'm going to try the min raise again, and he 3-bets me again, and I'm going to shove here. And the reason I'm shoving is he's just made this play the last time I min raised, and this will do two things. First of all, it'll take down the pot unless he's got a premium hand, which is what I'm hoping for, of course. Second of all, it will make him leave my min raises alone, which is what I want. I don't want him 3-betting my min raises all the time, unless I'm hitting good hands, and then I'm going to be 4-betting him, of course. But as I don't hit good hands that often, I'd rather that he left my min raises alone. Alright, 2-6, and I call, miss, and he checks. I would fire on the turn here if it was a blank, a non-heart, but I think betting here I'm going to get called by so many hands that have one heart in them that even though I think he's weak, I can't really bet. And he bets the turn, and I have to give it up. 10-2, folding that, just seem to be getting junk all day at the moment. 10-6, which we're calling, and he checks, and this time I am going to fire the turn. If I don't, he probably will, and I'd rather be betting than calling in this spot. I mean, I'd rather be putting him under pressure rather than me. And he folds. Alright, fold my 2-3, get rewarded with 2-7, lovely. Really have had some junky hands. Jack 3, we're not getting much better. And he attacks my limp, which he does from time to time. And obviously I'm going to try and take advantage of that by limping a strong hand at some stage. Just need to get a strong hand, which is the tough part of that plan. Good plan, unless you never get a strong hand. Alright, min raising, gonna call, and he c-bets, and once again I've got to let it go. So this second game is really testing my patience, not getting very good cards, not hitting that many flops, having to give up sometimes when I do hit a flop and so on. So testing my patience, but patience is what the game's about. And he 3x's here. I flat and catch a horrible flop. Now ace 3 is not a great hand to call his 3x raise on, of course, but he's doing it quite a lot. And I think it could be ahead of his raising range, but it doesn't play so well post flop, as you can see. And he checks and then fires 150. I think that looks like a pretty strong bet to me. All his. Right, min raising, and I decide to 3-bet him pre-flop. I've had enough of his rubbish, and he calls me 360 in the pot. Good to hit the ace there. I check to see if I can get any action from him. He bets half pot, and it's a pretty wet board with, well, not that wet, but I mean 2 hearts and the 10, so if he's got anything like Queen Jack, King Jack, or 2 hearts, I obviously don't want to give him a cheap turn. I'm just going to shove it. There's already 540 chips sitting there, so I'm going to take them if I can. If he's got an ace, good luck to him, and he didn't, and folds. That works pretty well. Alright, limp my ace 9, thought he might 3-bet, but he doesn't, and I'm going to check there with my gut shot, and I'm going to fold there on the turn. 10-8, I call, of course. Horrible flop. He c-bets, and I've got to give it up. So hit a couple of flops, just doesn't feel like I've hit enough, but maybe I'm just whining. Limp my king 4. Horrible flop to bet, so wet. Very rarely going to get folds here, and he seems to be taking down a lot of pots that I don't want. And perhaps I'm being a little bit too passive post flop, which is unusual for me. Alright, fold my 5 jack, and jack 7, easily call here. He bets pot, which I do not like. This bet size is different to the bet sizing he's made before. Normally he's betting 90 into the 120 pots, and I have a pretty strong feel he's hit big here. I'm going to call it, and now he bets 240. I'm definitely going to have to fold my top pair. Don't like folding top pair, but the way he's betting so aggressively, I think it's a good fold. Alright, queen 3, I try the min raise, and he flat calls, so no more of this 3-betting me rubbish. And now I get to attack, and he calls, which doesn't work out so well, but I don't think he's going to hit a jack 5 board very often. I think he's just floating me, and I think I can bet again, firing a second barrel representing either a king or a jack, or perhaps even a decent ace, and telling him that the float's not on. So I bet 120, and I get the fold. A lot of people not sure when to fire a second barrel. A fairly dry board on the flop against a tricky opponent, and then a card on the turn which you can represent, like I can represent the king here. That's a decent spot, as long as the guy's not a complete station. Alright, 7-10, back to the 10s. I think I've had about 5 or 6 hands with 10s in them. And a horrible miss, and we just have to fold. Nothing's really working. And here he 4x's me, and he does this now and again, as you know. I think I'm going to call it with my suited connectors, and I hit a monster flop. And he checks. 10 is of course horrible, and I make a bet here hoping to get called by an ace, and he folds. So he 4x me. Obviously he doesn't have an ace in his hand, he must have 4x me on absolute junk. Alright, min raising, I call, hit bottom pair, and I'm going to call this. He c-bets nearly every flop. Now he checks behind, and 240 on the river. Oh, I hate this. I probably should fold here. I think that if he's got something like ace 8, he'd probably bet more than 240. It looks like value, but stupidly I call and see king 10, so he hit a 3-outer on the river. Very nice, sir. Alright, jack 8. I try a min raise. He 3-bets me, and I should fold, but stubbornly, probably because I just took a bad beat, I call. Now he makes a big flop bet, and my plan here is I'm going to call him. When he checks the turn, I'm going to shove. And he shoves, which kind of ruins my plan and doesn't leave me with many chips. So I had a plan. It was probably a pretty dumb plan, and it's been ruined. And I simply have to fold up and sort of go home with my tail between my legs at this stage. So probably a plan that was induced by tilt and not that brilliant to start with, and it didn't work very well. Alright, min raise from him, folding my king 4. I'm too short to be calling on junk. I raise and going to have to c-bet and get called, which is not very good. And 4 clubs, that gives me some hope. If he's called on a hand that has a jack or a 10, then my club could be good. And I'm just going to shove and put him under pressure. And do I think I'm going to fold a worse club? Quite possibly. If he's got a 7 or a 9, I might get a fold here. And he does fold, so he probably didn't have a club, but it is possible that move folded at a worse club. I'm not sure how likely it is, but possible. Alright, 8-5, I call and finally hit a flop, thank goodness. And I'm just going to shove here. Bottom pair, not the best spot, but he's c-bet every single flop. So I need to be aggressive with my short stack, and luckily he folds. So back up to 785 chips. Min raise, 3-bet pre-flop, and I shove it. He's been doing that 3-bet way too much, and he folds, so that's lovely. Back up to 1,000, and things are looking peachy again. At 8-4, I'm going to fold. Jack 5 as well. He does attack those limps now and again. King 3, good enough. Good enough for government work, and going to raise him there on bottom pair, put him under some pressure. If he's got an ace, he's probably going to shove now, and I can get off the hand. And I'd rather take this pot right now if I can, and luckily he folds. So up to 1,200. And I've hit decent hand here. Bet, take it down. Alright, he min raises and I call, and we've hit bottom pair, so I can't fold. And now we've got an open-ended straight flush draw. Once again, I probably can't fold. 280, maybe I should shove. It's probably the correct play, but I elected to flat call it. I completely blanked the river, and now he shoves, and I probably misplayed that horribly. So the bad news is I probably misplayed it horribly by not shoving the turn or folding. The good news is I still have 785 chips and can win the match, whereas if I did shove, I probably would have lost the match. Okay. Jack 10 limping, and checking behind, hitting on the turn, which is nice. Just going to flat that in case he wants to bluff any chips at me, which unfortunately he doesn't. Probably a bit of a wet board to flat. I mean, I was taking a risk, but that's okay. Alright, min raising and flatting with my 8-9. And giving up. Doesn't seem like I'm hitting many flops. And ace-jack. I'm just going to shove that and hope he calls, which he doesn't. Alright, up to 25-50 blinds. I fold my queen 4 there. It's more of a psychological thing. I've just shoved him, and I don't want him to attack my limp, which he often does. Alright, him in raises, fold my 4-9, folding my 10-3, and finally call something with my 9-7. Hopefully I'm going to hit a flop one day, but not today. Alright, king 3, and checking behind. Now we've got a draw. Now we've hit our draw, and 100 to hope that we can get a call out of a 5 or a 4, and he had a 4, so that worked. Alright, he raises. I'm obviously going to fold my 5-3. Here I raise, hoping he's going to 3-bet me, and he doesn't. Nice timing, sir. And folding, calling the 10-7, sorry. And 150 bet again. I'm sure he's bluffing, dozens of flops against me, but I don't want to risk my whole stack and get the timing wrong. Okay, more folding. Here I min raise, And what a lovely flop that is. And he shoves on it. Fantastic. That worked out pretty well. Wish I'd shoved it pre-flop. Alright, A7. Him in raises. I've got, what's that, a bit more than 10 big blinds. Got to shove this. He calls on King 6. And luckily, I hold though only just. So back in the match with a bit over 1,000 chips, bit over 1,100 chips. I'm going to fold that next one for really psychological reasons because I think he's just doubled me up and he's probably going to attack my limp, is what I'm thinking. Alright, King 8, and good enough for me to flat, and horrible flop of course. He checks, and possibly I should fire the turn here, and that's pretty awful. And luckily we have some showdown value, and not sure why I didn't bet this flop really. It's not the sort of bet I'm going to hit, not the sort of flop I'm going to hit after I've called his min-raise pre-flop, but anyway, that's nice for me. And limping my 9-10, he 3x's me and I'm going to fold. And here he raises, and I'm going to shove my 6-6. Don't really want to flat call 6-6, and think he could well call on a worse hand, and in fact he calls on King Queen suited, which matches up pretty well against 6-6 unfortunately. 6 on the flop, so that's good, and a spade on the turn, so that's bad. Now I've got to fade the spade river, which we do, and we're in control. That works pretty well. And limp my Queen 6. He didn't sort of shove as I figured he might, and now he checks. I'm going to put some pressure on him, take down a pot, shoves on this hand. Queen 4 is nowhere near good enough to call. 5-5, I think I'm going to limp and call his shove. And he shoves, and I call. King 2, looking good. Just got to dodge the king, and I've got the heart, so he doesn't have many outs here. I'm looking good. 9 on the turn, that's a pretty ugly card. And bang, ace on the river. That's pretty cruel to take out my 5-5 there when I was looking good. He needed a pretty lucky turn and river there. And he got it, so never mind. Back in the game. I guess I won the flip with 6-6, so can't really complain. Alright, min raises, flat, and he bets 150, and I raise here immediately hoping that he's not going to believe me, and he folds, so I should have just flatted. And whatever I do in these situations, when it works I think, great, and I've just made a great move, and when it doesn't work I think I'm an idiot. So obviously flatting was the right move. I shouldn't have been raised. Then again, if he had a 5 or something like 6s or something, or 7s, by min raising, there's a good chance he's going to shove at me. So, I always seem to feel like I get that one wrong. Alright, Queen 5, limping, and he checks. I have a stab. He calls, and now I've got to shut down basically. And he bets 180 on the river. That hand's over and done with. Alright, he's being aggressive, and I'm going to fold. And I'm trying to raise and take some blinds, get called. And that's a pretty good flop. Not really sure how to play this. Don't know if I want to bet and face a raise. I don't want to get all my chips in on a draw. So I'm just going to check behind. Now I've picked up some more value. I've got a pair and ace on the river, and my 2 is actually good enough. I think if I had have bet that, he may well have shoved the flop, leaving me in a pretty horrible position. Actually, I'd be quite a big dog there because I couldn't catch any club 5s or 10s, and yeah, I'm kind of glad that I played it passively. It worked out for the best. Right, him in raises. I'm going to fold my Jack 7 and my 9-6, and we're getting just a lovely selection of horrible junk. Fold my 9-4, Queen 10, that's alright, something. And here I decide I'm going to check my middle pair and try and get some value on the turn, because it's a fairly, it's high enough that I'm willing to take the risk. And I bet on the turn, and he folds. That didn't quite work as I planned. No surprise there. Jack 7, I'm going to fold, and I'm getting aggressive here, and he calls, and I'm going to have to c-bet this flop, and I make a good solid 180 into the 240 pot, hoping to get the fold, which I do. Alright, 3-7, got to fold that. Ace 2, I limp. Not really sure why I'm not sure why I didn't raise that pre-flop. Probably should have. Stab, get check raised, and yuck. Alright, 5-10, not going anywhere with that. And it feels like he's probably being a little bit more aggressive than me. We're getting ground out here. Raise on 8-9. And I don't know, I probably should bet this, but I decide I'm going to play it passively and try and hit my straight and get a big pot. And I get a bit tricky for myself. And now I'm left with 9 high. And I think I'm going to bet this river aggressively and try and take the pot now. And it looks like a really weak move to me, but luckily it worked. Alright, he min raises, flatting with ace 2, absolutely awful flop. And I'm just going to have to fold. Alright, 2-3, I'm raising, getting quite aggressive. And c-betting, when I make this c-bet, I can't believe it's going to work. I think for sure he's going to check raise me or something, but luckily he folds. So perhaps my tight image is doing me some good. And here we hit top pair. He bets 180. It's a pretty aggressive bet. The board is, it's not that dry. And I think I'm just going to ship this in. If he's got a better queen, good luck. There's 420 chips sitting there. That's worth taking. That's basically a third of a stack. So I'm shipping it and let the cards fall as they may. And he folds. Didn't feel comfortable flatting there. Probably could have, but I'd hate to see some horrible turn and I can't fold the hand. Alright, min raising, jack 9, fairly dry flop, make a big bet and get the fold. That's working nicely. And here we've hit a monster. I check, and now's the time to bet. Hope to get called by a 3, possibly even a 6, but he folds. Alright, so here we're getting some junk again, 7-4. He's low, so I'm going to fold it. And he folds to me, thank goodness. 10-2, feels like I've had sort of so much junk this match. Fold that again. 10-6, I'm not really going to go far with that. Let that one go. King, queen, limping, and if he shoves, I think I'm going to call his shove. He doesn't. And I decide to bet this on the turn. I think my king high is good, but there's plenty of draws there. He calls me, and he also had a king, but I've got him out-kicked, so that's nice. 6-6, and he folds. I would have got the chips in there. I think we're 6-6. And jack 2, we're not going to compete with that. He raises with, I've got 6-9, I'm going to have to fold. And now we get ace-king. He's attacked my limp plenty in this match. I think I'm going to limp it, and he shoves, and obviously that's exactly what I've been waiting for. And we snap call, and blank, blank, and ace on the river, and that's the end of the match. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and until the next one, run good.